The endurance round and the double points it brought left us with two clear class leaders. But Detroit won't play any favorites and could easily eat up the gap they've built. Let's see who thrives in the Motor City as we get ready to watch Round 7 of the Porsche Owners Club Series. And you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Roush Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director, Danu Costello, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Detroit has since left behind this spectacular street course, but let's see how racing used to be done up north. Welcome to the Belle Isle Street Circuit. Situated in a beautiful park on Belle Isle itself, it rests in the Detroit River, sandwiched between the Motor City and Canada. With it being in the far north of the Midwestern United States, as you'd expect, harsh winters make this a bone-jarringly bumpy track. It's most known for IndyCar's yearly visit, but has also seen IMSA hold rounds here lately. The 14 narrow corners only add up to a mere 2.3 miles in length, but it can tend to feel like a lot more just from the sheer stress of keeping your car out of the walls. Runoff is non-existent in the majority of corners, so mistakes tend to be punished with race-ending damage. The dangers include the tight and twisty fountain section with its rapid-fire set of bends, and the frightening turns 12 and 13, which end the lap with two swift kinks. However, the most notorious spot on the track is the exit of Turn 2, made famous by collecting the Corvette pace car into its hungry walls one year. The first two turns are a quick chicane, so the extreme change of direction, plus the rise in the track as it crosses over a creek, means grip and balance can disappear in an instant. While the setup of the car can sometimes help lessen the annoyance of the bumps a little, what this place all comes down to is driver skill and daring. Precision will pay off with the close proximity of the barriers. While it isn't a stroll in the park for drivers, fans get to enjoy the beauty of the scenery all while watching some of the most thrilling racing an American street course has to offer. Well, this is a track that not only in real life threw up a lot of unusual results, but here in the sim can often throw the drivers for a loop, Joey.
It can be a roller coaster, and you can end upside down just like that, what you're saying, but it is 14 turns, 2.35 miles in length, and it is a street fight out here. You have to respect this place, not only because of the bumps, they also have tall apex curbs in certain areas, and then there's concrete walls that line this entire place. Your best passing opportunity, definitely turn number 3 at the end of Central Avenue, but don't count out turn number 7 after that long back straightaway that is an arcing curve into the brake zone. Be careful about that fountain section, turns 8, 9, 10, and 11. I'd probably consider that to be the most bumpy area of this racetrack. Even the GT cars, if you're offline there, can have some problems, but then tricky turn number 12 and 13. They can look so similar, and if you don't jump on the brakes for those, you can find yourself in the wall. But leading that out onto the kind of main straightaway around turn number 14, the final drive, Sunset Drive, that completes your lap here at Detroit.
Yeah, seems simple on the surface in some ways, but it's definitely not once you get down between those walls. Let's talk about our sponsors, though, real quick. Let's mention Porsche. There is no substitute. Find out more at Porsche.com. And Game Changer Wealth, helping you become a game changer with wealth. Contact them today at GameChangerBR.com or at 225-664-2565. As for the championship, if we take a look at the prototype points here, it is BJ Fulton who is leading the way. Michael Johnson giving chase, but it's a full 37 points. Remember, a regular race, 20 points for a win. So BJ's pulled out a pretty impressive gap for this early in the season. From there on down, things do get a little close between the likes of Roper, Heindel, Duncan, Kelderman, and Dawan. It is basically a pretty tight fight for third place, if you look at it that way. But Michael Johnson and BJ Fulton have been consistent up at the front, but Michael will need to try and strike back and start to reel him in if he hopes to take a title. We also have a GT1 class this season. Why don't we go through that, Joey?
It has been all Matt Steele leading the way. I think it's 5 wins in a row for that driver. Doug Bacchignone is only 20 points behind there, and he actually comes off of 2 podium finishes in the previous 2 races. Jeff Schulem sitting in 3rd place, 51 points behind our leader. Mark Rondeau in 4th. Federico Del Toro is actually showing a lot of speed here in qualifying at Detroit, even though he's sitting 5th in the standings. John Momeyer, Larry Haas, Robert Leclerc, Jim Garamani, and Jim Slavic have all competed in the GT1 standings.
As for today's race, we are back to the normal standard sprint race format. So it's going to be 30 minutes for round 7. And as we have been all season, we've got 2 classes. The Porsche 911 GT3R, that's our GT1 class. And then we've got the Porsche 963 GTP for our prototypes. It is an open setup series this season, which is different from last season, and drivers have had to try and get these cars set up to a way that they like, which can be rather important for those prototypes and how quick they can be. More than anything, Joey, I imagine around a track like this, getting that prototype nice and stable and comfortable is going to be key.
Stable and comfortable, yes, and that can be tricky, especially with the brake-by-wire system in the rear end of these cars. Threshold braking is important to make a pass, and you need to have confidence when you jump on that brake pedal, so it'll be interesting. This section of racetrack is heading down into that turn 3 where the drivers will be jumping on that brake pedal as hard as they can grab it, so I would say that if we're going to have any tricks up their sleeves, it might come down there in turn 3.
That is for sure. Jad Duncan, your current provisional pole sitter in the prototype class. Now, as we said, Michael Johnson is the one giving chase, and he's kind of known for not being great in qualifying. But here, I wonder if that's going to be a bigger hindrance, because this track is also known for being pretty tough to try and make overtakes.
There's a couple passing opportunities, but you're right. I think just naturally being a street circuit, you have to force another person into a mistake because it can be a single file racetrack. Michael Johnson is currently sitting 4th on the board as we ride along with BJ Fulton, who's right now P2 only, am I seeing this right? Only 3/100ths of a second off of Jad Duncan. Holy smokes, that is close.
Wow, that has closed up significantly. BJ Fulton taking the fight to Jad Duncan. We're on board with BJ now, who is coming onto the back stretch out of turn 6. This is the strand here. It's not really a straightaway, even though it's flat out on the way down into turn 7. But look at how he has to really steer the car into that braking zone and then straighten it out as he leads into the fountain section.
This is that 8, 9, 10 complex, and you see how tall those apex curbs are through there. You got to stay off of those. Even here in turn number 11, stay off of that apex, and then how bumpy it is through that section. This brake zone, it can be so dang tricky. It always leads into mistakes. Drivers always missing their marker in there, and then you see how fast the start-finish line comes up.
All right, what's he got this time by? An 18.9 is not going to do it. That's well off of his best time. So he'll cycle around once again. Unfortunately, a little bit held up on that first set of corners out on to Central Avenue. But we're checking out Mark Rondeau. He's got, looks like about 7/10, maybe 8/10 to make up to Matt Steele if he wants to try and take that pole away. Federico Del Toro's come within 4/10 of Matt Steele as it sits right now. Not too shabby considering the pace we've seen, and Rondeau getting awful close to that right-hand wall coming through the fountain section.
You caught that too, and then was a little bit wide through turn number 11 there as well. So maybe Mark Rondeau is having a little bit of a warm-up lap out here, and maybe doesn't have the front tires completely up to temperature and up to pressures. That can also induce a lot of that understeer.
Yeah, with those open setups, you can try and tweak that even here in qualifying, where it could be important not having the long race to worry about, trying to get tires that are good on the short run and get yourself some instant speed. Federico Del Toro down into turn 3, and unfortunately not able to complete any more of the lap from there as the checkered flag comes out. So that's his qualifying done. As for those getting ready to complete a lap, I think Doug Baccignone is going to be our next one. He's just in front of the car we're watching here, Dustin Heindel, who sits 7th in the prototypes. He sends it through 11 and 12. Looks like he'll keep it out of the wall in the first one and the second one. Baccignone looking like he's going to improve. In fact, he pulls off to the side to make sure he doesn't hinder Heindel, who does not improve either.
And I think maybe the only other car out there is Jeffrey Shulam here in the 371. He'll be able to complete this lap. Only a few more corners here for this black and blue graffiti-themed car. I'll look up and see Barney waving the checkered flag. I don't see this one improving on his previous best. In fact, a 130.8. No, it's not going to improve.
No, that is it. That's everybody able to set a lap from here. Or qualifying has finished. We'll go through that starting order in a little bit. But the good news is the weather is looking like it should be pretty good for the drivers. Mostly cloudy, so it shouldn't make the track all terribly warm. 77 Fahrenheit on the surface, about 25 Celsius for the metric folks. It's got a little bit of wind. I'm not sure how much that's going to affect the prototypes. I don't know. What do you think, Joey?
I don't think so. The thing about street circuits, you've got these big giant concrete walls, and I know that the guardrails are just chain link fence. Yeah, the wind goes through them, but the walls, they really cut a lot of that wind. I don't think it's going to be a factor.
All right, let's go through the starting order of our prototype class. You've got Jad Duncan starting on the pole with BJ Fulton in second today. Dylan Scott going to be P3. Michael Johnson is starting 4th, so he's not super far back, but he's got some passes to make, as AJ Roper will start in 5th, and then Michael Bolton will be 6th. From there, it's Dustin Heindel, P7, and Will Castillo did not get a practice time in, but was able to set a qualifying lap good enough for 8th today. Joey?
Then we've got the GT1 class. Matt Steele is your pole sitter there in the number 5 machine. Federico Del Toro will start next to him in 2nd. Mark Rondeau in 3rd, with Robert Leclerc next to him in 4th. Matt Hollander in 5th, with Doug Baccignone in 6th. Jeffrey Shulam 7th, and Jim Garamani rounding out the 8-car GT field.
Yep, in fact, we've got 8 and 8 in each of our 2 classes, so nice and even out there, but this is not a track that you usually see multi-class with. They did a little bit. They had IMSA racing here at times, and I can only imagine how terrifying that was if they had to deal with multiple classes. I don't think they brought the prototypes back then, though, if I'm remembering correct. Do you remember, Joey?
They did have prototypes and
Really?
GT cars, yes, at Detroit before the multi-class. In fact, it was only a couple years ago that they had them.
Wow, that's gutsy. That's got to be terrifying in the real cars. I mean, here in the sim, it's already going to be quite a feat for our drivers, and they'll have just a partial lap to get this one going. Worth noting, they actually moved the start of the pace lap back a little bit. Used to start right here, but that was just a little bit too quick of a transition before they sent them off on the green flag run. But pace car is now leading Jad Duncan around the last couple corners. Will peel off, and Jad will have control of the field, although he does have to hold until he gets the green flag signal from Barney. So no jumping on this one. You definitely do not want a black flag to hurt you on your track position. Waits very patiently, a slow start from the field, and the green flag is finally out. Duncan does not go. BJ Fulton might be able to jump around the outside, and in the middle, there comes the purple car of Michael Johnson. He gets up into 3rd, almost was looking for a 2nd or 1st, but unable to do so. A fight back from Duncan, and he is back into the lead, at least temporarily, Joey, coming down Central Avenue.
It's a breaking duel down into turn number 3. AJ Roper looks to the inside, but now they all funnel single file. It is Matt Steele, your pole sitter in that GT1 class, that leads the way. Mark Rondeau has taken over the 2nd place from Federico Del Toro, who now slips down into 3rd.
They They work their way through 4, 5, and 6. They weave onto the strand now. Matt Steele, as you said, still leading, looking up at our GTPs. Michael Johnson is threateningly close to BJ Fulton, although he almost gets rammed from behind by Dylan Scott, who thankfully does not run into him. Back into the slower fountain section. Now at speed, though, as the drivers try to find their place.
This is always tricky on the opening lap. The tires aren't always up to temperature, and usually you're coming out of a qualifying setup where the car is light on fuel. It's responding to all the inputs that you put in there, but the driver has to change that setup, and they've got to reset the brain and get in there for the race.
So after the first lap, it's going to be Duncan, Fulton, Johnson, Scott, Roper. There's your top 5 in the prototypes. And it looked like maybe Jad was going to lose that early on. We're watching Will Castillo giving chase on Dustin Heindel at the back of the field. One of the closer fights we've got at the moment. Doesn't look like he's close enough to try anything coming down into turn 3. So he'll stay put as we go side by side just ahead of them. Bolton gets denied as AJ Roper will fend him off.
Bolton did a good job to climb up on that apex curb. I think that AJ Roper left him enough room, but didn't want to make any side-to-side contact with that orange 07 there in front of him. And good racing between the two. Check out Will Castillo, though. Got a good run coming out of turn number 6, trying to use the slipstream behind Dustin Heindel here into this arcing brake zone. He's able to close it in a little bit more and leads into the bumpy fountain section.
Will came in with no laps in practice, so straight to qualifying for him. He might be a bit on the back foot, and he's showing good pace here, so there could be more underneath that car than what we witnessed in that qualifying session. AJ Roper, after being rebuffed by Michaels, trying to set him back up once again, completing lap 2, but he's almost a full second behind already.
Yeah, I think you set up a couple good talking points, especially when we were talking about the passing areas with the Detroit street circuit. You know, it can be tough to pass here. We were talking about that pre-race, and then Will Castillo not getting that qualifying time, jumping straight into the race. We're going to see if that number 16 car that's all the way at the back of the field, call him the caboose on the tail end of the field, if he can actually make those passes up the field.
Federico Del Toro is on a good string of finishes. He's got 2 podiums and a 4th underneath him. So he's been climbing up the points steadily and qualified very well here today, although he's down 1 position, having given up that front row to Mark Rondeau right at the start. Meanwhile, Robert Leclerc just behind them is chasing on a whole train of cars, including Hollander and Del Toro, who we were just watching.
Yeah, the gaps don't really reflect how close these cars actually are to each other. In the street circuits, they do kind of bunch up a little bit, and Doug Boccignone is probably the closest on the back of Jeffrey Shulam as we watch him exit turn number 6. Try to put the power down this, call it back straightaway here. It is definitely not straight, and then it leads into that arcing brake zone. Doug's definitely not close enough, but as long as you're in that rear view mirror, you're trying to introduce that variable to the driver in front.
Doug's a little out of position, sitting in 7th. He's been on the podium in all but 1 race so far this season. So we'll see whether or not he can try and make up for that. Watching from Will Castillo, looking over his shoulder, and he is very much hot on the heels of Heindel. He's been threatening him for at least a lap and a half from what we've witnessed, but he just can't seem to find a way by like you were talking about, Joey. He's going to have to really stay patient and look for that opening somewhere.
Let's watch him through a series of corners here. Up on the apex curb a little bit there. Cost him on exit, definitely. And then now out of turn number 6 was a little bit wide there. Maybe too much rolling apex speed. So I think that maybe through the first half of this racetrack, or maybe even the first sector there, Will Castillo not quite up to pace. Probably has to learn a few more of the nuances here at Detroit. But he did close it up through this final sector. So I'm curious, through the fountain is a little bit neat and tidier on those apexes, and then this is turn number 11, a little bit wide off apex there, struggles trying to put the power down. So Dustin Heindel doing a great defense.
Doing everything he needs to do right now, and you mentioned how close things got for Will. I went back and watched it. Almost looked like he scraped some paint off the left-hand side of that car. He got so close to the wall. And while Michael Johnson started this race very strong and was on the attack, it seems maybe pace going away a little bit in these early stages because Dylan Scott's been threatening him in the meantime. Ooh, Castillo now goes for the move coming down into turn 3. He's going to be given space at the apex, and the battle will carry on. Down into turn 4, he has the inside once again, but Dustin is not going to give this one up easily. Still wheel to wheel, and there finally Will Castillo has to give up the ghost. I thought he did. He's coming back at him, Joey.
They just banged doors on corner exit there, so now Will Castillo has the preferred driver's line going into the brake zone. A little bit of posturing. Dustin Heindel can fight this back. He's on the grippier racing line, but I think the shortest distance will prevail there. So Will Castillo is finally up into 7th and now actually has 4.5 seconds to try to close in a gap on AJ Roper.
Man, to Dustin's credit, he made him work for that one. And to Will's credit, going side by side for about 4 or 5 corners at this track is no mean feat. So a fantastic overtake as Michael Johnson just stole the fastest lap of the race from our leaders. Interesting. So he's starting to pick it back up once again. We take a look at our leader, Jad Duncan. He's got BJ Fulton behind by about 0.8 of a second currently. So he's not exactly streaking away from him.
Oh, and that purple lap from Michael Johnson does kind of pique my interest. It raises one of my eyebrows because if Dylan Scott is, call it right in his mirror, it's not what Michael wants. He doesn't want somebody looking over his shoulder. I wonder if the 08 actually kind of plays nice as we approach the GT traffic for the first time. Here's a variable that we haven't even mentioned yet. Things are going to get wild.
Jim Garamani's trying to stay off to the side. He's being caught in an absolutely atrocious spot for the drivers. Actually does a very good job at letting them through, though. Did not interrupt any of the battles somehow. So a pat on the back there for Jim on being able to get out of the way. But this seems to have held up Michael just slightly because Dylan Scott's closer than when we last saw him. They're coming through the last few corners. Oh, but he is not as solid as Michael is over those 2 right-handers.
I think that actually not only Dylan closing it in on Michael, but Michael was closing it in on BJ Fulton. You see him pretty much equal gaps between Dylan and Michael, and then Michael and BJ just up the road as well. So back to my point, I wonder if the 08 actually tries to work with Michael a little bit if they can close it in on second place.
I mean, it feels like it might be the smarter thing to do because unless he has a huge enough pace difference that he could make a quick pass, maybe he's not being held up enough that it's going to make that much of a difference right now. But whatever the case, he has been kind of just sitting and waiting, watching as he follows that purple car through the streets of Detroit's Belle Isle. We check back in with Jad Duncan, about 1.4 seconds over BJ Fulton now. So he's starting to increase that one rather quickly compared to before.
But something I've noticed, this lap, he had made a mistake somewhere because he's about 3/4 of a second off of his, call it, best lap so far. And BJ Fulton is just kind of ebb and flowing that gap a little. I see more GT traffic on the horizon, so I think that there's going to be more wild cards to come, and I think Jad Duncan will get through these nice and easy, kind of lining them up onto the straightaway.
Yeah, Jad definitely gets an easier turn through this, like you said. And you want to do that as the leader. You're the first car to sort of shake these drivers up, make them aware the leaders are indeed coming. And he's going to sneak through that pair before BJ Fulton can get by on the straightaway. And more crucially, look at that. Michael Johnson is having to seriously tiptoe amongst them.
Yeah, but he was able to separate himself and Dylan by one of those GT cars on a previous corner. Now they'll both clear. I believe that is Jeff Shulam in the 371. So it's just going to kind of go back to exactly how it was before they ran up on those GT cars. But that was, call it 6th and 7th. We still have a handful more of those GT cars still up the road.
Yeah, Leclerc, Matt Hollander going to be the next 2 up. They got a little break before Del Toro, but there's definitely kind of duos in front of them that might be fighting for position, so they'll have to be careful Those drivers won't always be as focused behind with what's going on. Will Castillo, excuse me, that's AJ Roper getting very close to Doug Boccignone. Thankfully doesn't make contact with him, but now he's going to slip by before anything worse happens.
So, Joe, Michael Bolton was just up the road, and look at how much it's compressed up here. BJ Fulton has lost second place. Michael Johnson and Dylan Scott have gone around in the midst of traffic, so problems with that 82 going from second all the way back to fourth.
Wow, 2 positions lost in a single lap here for the number 82 car. He'll come out into turn 6. He hasn't lost touch with them. That's the good news, and there's more traffic up ahead. Federico Del Toro is going to be the next one. He's going to stay off to the side, gets a little bit of an advantage on that one. What about Mark Rondeau? Will he wind up having to split them? Looking down to the inside, you can tell Scott is desperate to try and get through. He will. Oh, but he almost runs into the wall on the outside.
Yeah, that was a dangerous move to put yourself in the marbles. BJ Fulton is going to scoot underneath Mark Rondeau. So, Joe, I went back and took a look at exactly what happened to BJ Fulton to make him lose that second place there. And I got to give him tons of credit because he was running up on Matt Steele, our GT1 leader, in the turn 1 and 2 complex. Matt couldn't keep it off of the wall, essentially, on the turn 2 exit. BJ Fulton lifted completely out of it. He said, I don't want to involve myself in a crash, especially with another class leader. Both of them are still running it on the road.
Smart move there for sure. It just cost him a little bit, but maybe it'll keep him running in this race. And Doug Boccignone finally gets by Jeffrey Schulem. He's been working on that since the beginning, and he gets it around lap 9. Now can he set off after Leclerc and at least get himself a top 5? Like I said, he's been on the podium for the majority of the season, and he'll be disappointed if he can't try and return to that. And in fact, I think Leclerc just had an issue. Is this what we got a replay for?
This is what I was just mentioning. Look at Matt Steele running all the way out there, and then BJ Fulton. And I actually think, Joe, he might have touched the wall. I don't see any damage, but that was where he went from second to fourth.
So that makes so much more sense seeing that now and what cost him on that. I went back and checked, and Leclerc had just a spin, it looks like. I don't think he actually got the wall later on. So that's going to send him down to 5th. So he didn't lose a position as we continue to watch Castillo as he's caught up to AJ Roper. So he passed Dustin Heindel. Now he's got his fellow orange car just in front of him. Can he do anything on the 07?
I think probably looking down to turn number 3 is where Will is going to try to set something up here. So get through 1 and 2. But AJ gets a really, really nice corner exit there, but now comes the power of the slipstream. Will Castillo right in the tire tracks. We got Matt Steele, our GT1 class leader, but Castillo just not quite close enough, and Roper's going to clear the GT car before the corner.
This holds up Will. He'll eventually get by, and wow, yeah, he doesn't lose any time at all, honestly, so that worked out beautifully. A little facilitated by Matt Steele, who saw what was happening and tried to stay out of their way. We got another replay, and this is Robert coming down into turn 3. You know what? I think the curb and maybe just a little too much speed came together, and it was a potent mix.
That's exactly what it was. Can upset the platform with that apex curb. Good job to stand on the brakes right there rather than pull it out in front of that prototype. That could have been a really, really bad end of the day right there as we jump back up. This battle hasn't gone anywhere. We might be halfway through the race, but Dylan Scott is still trying to find a way around Michael Johnson.
So Johnson back into second place now. And he's had a win and a P3 so far this season. He might be second in points, but his results just don't reflect the speed that we've been seeing from him. And he'd probably like to add to that win tally, but he's now 1.8 seconds behind and clearly more on the defense than on the attack, considering how Dylan Scott's been just filling his mirrors.
I just watched him carve off of turn number 6, though, and Michael Johnson is a real-world racing car driver. He understands the concepts of racing, and that brake zone into turn 7, he realizes he needed to gap it out, and he just stood on the throttle coming out of that turn 6, was able to nail the exit in probably one of the more crucial areas of the racetrack. If you're looking for somebody to make a mistake, he's not going to do it in the important stuff.
Very savvy driver, that's for sure. Always thinking, going to try and make himself very difficult to pass, even if he can't catch up to Duncan here. And honestly, though, one of my notes was to just survive tonight's race. So if he stays in second place, that's not a horrible place to be.
I think all of the field has done a great job surviving. I mean, we haven't seen anybody hard into the tires. We're coming up to turn 3. The closing speed is just so much fun to watch between these GT cars and the prototypes at the end of the straightaway. But back to my point, I think the whole field has done a tremendous job not to cause any pileups. Detroit can be a very, very difficult circuit to kind of tiptoe around.
Yeah, you make a good point. While we've seen some spins out there, you know, we were kind of joking the spare cars that the drivers have are going to get used up tonight, and yet we're 13 minutes to go, and I don't think I see, none of the spare cars have been used at this point. So a huge round of applause to the drivers. They have done a spectacular job on racing clean with this one, as we watch Federico Del Toro still down in this third position and about half a second behind Mark Rondeau, although he kicks up the dirt on the exit of 3.
And Joe, something caught my eye as we watch these GT cars. Chad Duncan's lead has evaporated from 2+ seconds down to 1.2. It was 1.0, so this lap from our leader, a 120.6. Our lap from Michael Johnson in second, a 119.7.
Interesting. But to add even more spice into the mix, they're now caught by BJ Fulton as well. I don't think he was a part of this before. It's now a 3-car battle, and yeah, you can see our leader up ahead of them. They are indeed gaining.
I wonder if it was just a bad lap from our leader, because he seems to be back on it, and he stretched it from 1.2 up to call it about 1.5 at corner exit here. We were talking about how tricky Detroit is. I mean, it's not just tricky for one driver, it's tricky for everybody, including our leader.
Well, he's about to hit more of the traffic soon, and if I look at his lap times, it seems that a lot of the deviances you can see from his typical lap time is trying to go by those lapped cars. So that's going to have a dramatic effect on things, especially if he doesn't get the brakes and those behind him do. There's a little bit of a look there from Dylan Scott trying to see if he can distract Michael, but still not squeezing any juice from that lemon.
Just trying to show the nose in the mirror a little bit. I also wonder if he's starting to feel maybe a little bit of that pressure from BJ Fulton, since he has kind of crawled back onto the back end of this battle here. Michael Johnson, the tail end of the car, maybe a little bit floaty there through turn number 1 and 2, was able to keep the foot to the floor, though. That's really all that matters. Jump on the brakes here, and everybody just kind of equal distant, call it a quarter of a second, maybe 2 car lengths between each of them.
You were wondering about whether that last lap would be quicker. Well, it was down to a 19.1, so about 0.3 quicker.
Oh, sorry, we got problems there. Dylan Scott forced it up the inside because Michael Johnson got balked by a GT car and things got shuffled.
It really did. That was a very decisive move, and in fact made a little contact in the process by Dylan Scott, but he's got the position, did what he had to do, and now instead of BJ Fulton losing 2 in 1 lap, it was Michael Johnson who falls down to 4th place. Just a incredibly, oh no, he just hit the wall as we went into a replay here.
Well, let's watch the replay. So Michael's going to get balked by the GT car. He lifts. Dylan takes advantage. Just a little bit of contact there at apex, but it costs Michael huge on exit. And then what we didn't see is coming through the fountain section, Joe, I think it was actually all 3 of them that ran into the turn 11 wall.
Interesting. Unfortunately, target fixation strikes once again. Michael Johnson, though, is wasting no time. He's caught up to BJ Fulton and is trying to make a pass in turn 3. Long way around, and he does it, finding the grip. The 9 moves on to the podium once again.
We saw a GT car jump that apex curb, get really upset, but now Michael's saying deja vu, another GT car in the same corner. He goes to the inside this time, and Matt Steele says, you know what, I got an 8-second lead. I can leave plenty of room.
I think that was Leclerc, actually, that let them through. Yep, this is
different
Steele
pink
right
car.
Here. Yeah, I know that I get distracted by that too. Easy to confuse the two of them, but I kind of figured that Johnson was going to cover off that inside this time after what happened before. He's not going to make the same mistake twice. But Matt Steele, has he had any mistakes tonight? He has just been ripping off the laps. He's 8.3 seconds ahead of Mark Rondeau, and no, Doug Boccignone, who is looking like he was having an improving night, has had it turn sour.
This was in the fountain section, I want to say, that I went back and looked as we look at Federico Del Toro. He's currently chasing down Mark Rondell. Mark is the gray car with the orange wing. Federico is the gray car with the red wheels and red mirrors here. Let's see if they can close it in. I also see Jad Duncan and Dylan Scott right in the rear view. So remember how Dylan Scott was kind of maybe frustrated behind Michael Johnson for the first 15 minutes? Ever since he's been freed up, a 118.9, that just hunted down our leader, and now he's threatening to overtake.
Yeah, he's getting very close. He's using the traffic very well to his advantage. So this is what happened to Doug. Rear gets away from him. And does he keep it completely off the wall? Looks like he did.
Yeah, from what I saw, yes. And he did a good job to try to turn it around there. Maybe using all of the Costco parking lot, but got it done.
Yeah, there's not many places where you can go beyond the curbs here, but you use what little grass there is. As once again, right up against the wall for BJ Fulton. He's still behind Michael Johnson. These two have lost touch with Dylan Scott and Jad Duncan by a large margin now at this stage. Oh, and he's going to get held up across the start-finish line. He covers the inside, coming down into Casino Way, and he'll hold on to the spot. But tense moments for Michael Johnson as he is just getting the worst of situations with traffic.
Yeah, and then, you know, trying to draft GT cars probably doesn't help the case either. You just have to be decisive with traffic. You have to pick right lane or left lane, as Dylan Scott is officially right on the back of our leader, and that is Matt Steele, our GT1 leader this time.
And he does indeed let them go with a wide berth. He sees what's going on here. Battle for the lead in the prototypes, deep into the braking zone for both of them. A little off the apex for Dylan Scott as we ride on board of them through the fountain section. Jad Duncan doesn't have to worry as much about a pass down through here, but what about once they get to Central Avenue? Can he shake him enough that he can keep him at least far enough away that he can't make a move?
See, this is turn 13 here, and Jad maybe actually out a little bit wide there. Doesn't cost him too much time. I see another GT car on the horizon. I wonder if that'll affect his run through turns 1 and 2. So this is always so crucial. And look at the run that Dylan Scott has got. This is going to be an overtaking move, a huge squeeze from Jad Duncan. Dylan Scott had to completely get out of the gas. That was a pretty aggressive defense.
He tried to cover off the inside. There was a bit of a lane, and then that lane disappeared very late down the straight, and that's what caused Scott to have to dive off to the side like we saw. I doubt he's terribly happy with that one, but the car is still clean, and it's obviously fast.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Jad probably didn't judge the traffic that well, and Dylan had a terrific run, but Dylan was the smarter of the two to lift completely out of it to avoid wrecking them both, and still got 5 minutes remaining. Doing a minute 20 laps, still got plenty of opportunities.
Not a whole lot of them, though. He's going to have to do something rather quickly, although he's done the main work, which is to get to the back of that car, and he's trying to position himself so that he can capitalize on those moments with the traffic. The bad news for him is the next one is Doug Boccignone. He's almost a third of the lap up the road, so they're not going to get him for a while, if at all, before the end of this race. Looking over the back of Jad Duncan's rear of the car. Back at Dylan Scott. Oh, that was a great exit out of turn 2 there. He's going to keep himself well clear.
I do feel that Dylan's probably the fastest car on the racetrack currently. I think that Jad Duncan did an excellent job, especially in qualifying the first half of this race, to kind of set the pace and manage the race from the front of it. But Dylan has been able to pass Michael Johnson, albeit a little bit rough and aggressive, but he was able to get it done. And then he was able to hunt down our leader up here. So I do feel that Dylan is probably the fastest car and the fastest driver currently. Just can he get it done before the time runs out?
Into the fountain section once again. This has been an impressive race from Jad Duncan, I have to say. The way that he's not only had pretty good pace, but when the pace hasn't been there in comparison, he's been playing the defense that he needs up to this point. Now, it got a little sketchy, like we saw down Central Avenue at one point, but other than that, I mean, he's played just a great game.
Check in on Mark Rondeau, who's currently sitting in the second place in this GT1 class. A little bit of a lonely race. He's done a nice job to gap it out over Federico Del Toro, who's currently sitting in third, about, call it 3 seconds back from this gray and orange Porsche 911 GT3R. It wasn't but a few laps ago that Federico was actually much closer, so nice job to Mark to lay down the laps and be consistent, grow that gap.
And somebody hit the wall there in the background. Didn't quite see which car that was, but didn't look too healthy there. This is just behind Matt Hollander, and unfortunately squeezes. It was Dustin Heindel there, who is currently running last of the GTPs. He's a little circumspect, and no wonder, coming off of turn 2.
Just got to shake it off every now and then. Not every pass or every overtake is going to be perfectly executed, but sometimes you got to think like a goldfish and forget it as soon as it happened and focus on the next apex, the next break zone, as Robert Leclerc is just kind of hanging out here in the 5th place. Jeff Shulam sitting in 6th in the number 371. We still have all 8 of our GT1 contenders out there on the racetrack. Doug Boccignoni, the number 59, is also out there. And then finally, Jim Garamani here in this black and blue number 163.
Yep, Jim's last on the field right now, but as we said, everybody is still on the car they started this race with. By the way, I checked, Jad Duncan, a single second place this season, and nothing really other than that to write home about. So this is going to be a dramatic change in fortunes. There's some pretty serious damage, it looks like, on Dustin's left-hand side.
Maybe got the elbow out a little bit there with Mark Rondeau as well. He's got to make his way through the rest of these GT cars, but I'm looking at Dylan Scott because he is underneath the rear wing of Jad Duncan, and there is more traffic. And look at this, they're going to get held up. A little bit of contact front to rear between our first and second place prototype runners, and now it's going to come down to the run out of the corner.
Shulam had no place he could go right there. He just pretty much had to run his own line and hope that they would stay patient. They did, but yeah, this has backed them up, and the white flag is about to come out. 1 to go for Dylan Scott and Jad Duncan to try and decide this one. Jad looking for his first win of the season. Dylan Scott with incredible speed that he doesn't want to waste when he knows he's got it.
The run down to turn number 3. Dylan got a nice run, but just not close enough. He's really going to have to use that brake pedal, but Jad Duncan has just done such a good job to manage the race from the front. He hasn't let anything in the rearview mirror really ever phase him. We saw that one attempt going down into turn number 3, and he just kind of shook it off like nothing ever happened.
Dylan is hungry. His best finish this season is a 4th place at round 3, and it looks like he could try and start his podium run with a victory if he can just get by Jad Duncan. But from here on out, it's going to be extremely hard. There's a few good passing zones through the fountain section, out of there and to the line. Unless Jad Duncan makes a major mistake, all he has to do is hit his marks from here. Oh, and right up against the wall. Maybe a little brush for Dylan Scott, pushing at 10/10. Robert Leclerc will hopefully not get in the way of the pair of them as they come to the line. Oh, it's going to be close. It's a good exit from Dylan Scott. They're coming up to it. They're going to be 3 wide, and he almost gets them. But it's going to be Chad Duncan by less than 1/10 of a second. And then another 3 wide behind them for third place.
It was an identical finish between first and second, and then also third and fourth in the prototypes. They all split a GT car coming to the line to finish that race. All smiles all around. This is our GT1 leader, Matt Steele, coming through the fountain section. Remember, he started on pole position. He's led every single lap so far. Marc Rondeau was actually a little bit of a challenger in those first couple opening laps, but ever since then, he's just put in the consistent laps and grown that gap. Looks like he's going to make it 6 in a row, Joe.
Undefeated this season. He was not able to attend the first round, but every one that he has come to, Matt Steele has taken a win. Out of the last corner and to the line, victory for the Roxy car once again. And Marc Rondeau going to bring it home with an excellent second place. And credit to Federico Del Toro behind him, kept him honest all the way to the end. By the way, Johnson stole that podium with that 3 wide situation. He passed Fulton. And we're going to take another look at that real quick. So I think this, so he's going to get by briefly, but then he brushes that car. You couldn't quite see it from above. And BJ Fulton loses his momentum just from that tiny touch with the GT car. And that allows Johnson through to beat him by 65 thousandths of a second.
Man, good thing those team owners weren't worried about those chassis written them off afterwards, huh?
Yeah, I mean, again, not a single spare car needed in that race. As we go through our results, Chad Duncan is your winner, his first win of the season. Dylan Scott gets his first podium, but it was so close to being a win here for his first top 3. Michael Johnson gets onto the podium at the last moment over BJ Fulton, who finishes 4th, with Michael Bolton getting himself a top 5. AJ Roper takes 6, while Will Castillo looked like he did have the speed, but the lack of practice time maybe hurt him today as he finishes 7th. Dustin Heindel, with a bit of a damaged car, does bring it home in 8th. What about our GT1s here, Joey?
Matt Steele started from pole, led every lap, and collects the win in that number 5. Marc Rondeau with a second place finish, and credit to Marc, he was the only other GT car that laid down a 1:29 lap, so really showed up during the race. Federico Del Toro finishes on the podium there in 3rd, with Robert Leclerc in 4th. Matt Hollander finishing in 5th, Jeff Shulam in 6th place, Doug Boccignone in 7th, and Jim Garamani in 8th.
It looks like we've got our winner ready to talk to us from the prototypes, Chad Duncan. Curious to hear his thoughts on that one, because I have to imagine there was a bit of sweating happening in that cockpit throughout the race. Chad, you had such pressure at the end.
Yeah, I'm drenched right now. That was a workout. I didn't think I'd need a fan tonight because it's not very warm, but I was wrong.
Well, at the start of the race, it looked like you were able to pull at least a little bit of a gap. It wasn't massive, and then they started to reel you in. What was the difference between the beginning and the end of the race?
Traffic, basically. How you time that could really make a big difference. And then at the end, it's so hard to pass here. I'm just like, don't hit the wall, don't hit the wall. So I was giving up a couple attempts to make sure I didn't hit the wall.
I think that's a good approach to it. But you had a second place back at round 5, and now you finally get back on the podium here in round 7, and it's the top spot. So things are trending well. What does this mean for you in the second half of the season?
Hopefully it goes better. I thought I got off to a really bad start. Some of it my fault, some of it was bad luck. But hopefully that turns around and I can keep this up. But this track was a workout. It'd be nice to go to COTA where it's smooth and easy.
And a lot fewer walls next to the track.
Yeah, and more places to pass.
That's true. Well, congratulations. An excellent job with a pole and a win today.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all your work here.
That was Jad Duncan, your victor in the prototypes. And I believe that Joey has caught up with Superman.
Matt Steele, congratulations on making it another win from pole position. How does it feel, dude?
It's feeling good. It was a little tighter today than it's been. It's like in leading up to it with quali. I knew Federico had a lot of pace, and then Mark showed up in practice, and he had a lot of pace too. I was getting a little bit nervous. I felt like I was probably able to handle a better 30-minute average. So I just kind of focused on hitting marks and getting pole. That was really the most important thing. So Federico was very nervously close to my time, so I just stayed in it to try and shave a few tenths here, a few tenths there.
I saw that Mark was pretty close, especially on those opening couple laps. Now, do you kind of take your time in bringing those tires up to temperature, or was he just really blazing fast out of the gate?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I was taking my time, getting the car warmed up, getting everything solid. I knew that on that track, unless there's a pretty big pace difference coming out of turn 2, there's just no way by. There's no way to pass because we're so alike on braking. So, when I saw the gap was more than a second, I just kind of took my time getting the tires in, making sure my brake bias was set right and my traction control was set right to just kind of keep things balanced and calm. And then, just started focus on hitting the marks and eventually the gap built up and it was just smooth sailing from there. The lap traffic was a lot more of an issue in this one. We had quite a few scary moments. I got tagged in the back with about 4 laps to go and I was a little worried I had some suspension damage, but it was all right.
We didn't catch the contact, but we caught plenty of moments between prototypes and GT cars out there. You're doing a great job. I think that's 6 in a row for you, so keep up the good work out there. Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Oh, just my family if anybody's watching, and thank you to you guys. Putting on a great show.
That was Matt Steele winning yet again here in the GT1 category.
That's going to take us to Dylan Scott, who finished P2 in the prototypes and was shy by less than a tenth of a second on that first win of the season. Dylan, it's also your first podium of the season. Does that make up for things a little bit, or were you really wanting that win over everything?
It never makes up for it, does it? Yeah, qualifying was important here. Did not get a clean qualifying. But it's good to be up on the podium. I would call that a very controlled race, well within the pace limits. So, and Jad is buttery smooth, doesn't make mistakes, so you cannot rely on him to give you a position. So yeah, happy to be on here. We'll head for one step further. I've been threatening to be on the podium the last few rounds, so slowly figuring this car out and hopefully maybe the next one.
Now, you guys also had a moment coming down to turn 3 where it looked like you had to get out of the gas. What's your thoughts on what happened there? And have you had a chance to talk to Jad about that?
I did yell over the radio like, oh, it's a bit late. I got a great run onto the front straight. I was just going to motor on past him down the front straight and that door closed. It was close. I don't know. Jad's not that guy, so it probably wasn't intentional. It probably would have been for the lead, but that's okay. It's sim racing. This is better than me locking up and spinning out and being at the back of the pack. So I'll take second. For a moment there, I was sort of resigning to second, hoping Jad would make a mistake. Kind of knew he wouldn't. That was the one opportunity. Went to take it. That door closed. At that point, I thought better to bring it home in second place than hero to zero again. So I kind of just drove it home with Jad. Kept it clean.
Well, that sounds like a wise head on your shoulders. And again, congratulations on a podium today.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Thank you, GSRC. Thank you, POC.
That was Dylan Scott, P2 in the prototypes, and similar finish for Michael Johnson. Joey's caught up with him.
Yeah, got Michael Johnson here in the commentary booth. First of all, congratulations on narrowly getting that third position.
Yeah, I was uttering words that you shouldn't utter on radio during that whole last lap. It was kind of crazy.
Well, and then I was saying, thankfully, the team owner didn't care about the chassis there after start finish.
Yeah, true, but I think he was very happy to be on the podium, so I think it kind of balanced out in the long run.
Dude, so it seemed like you had your hands full a lot. Between BJ, Fulton, between Dylan, Scott, your rearview mirror was never empty, was it?
I had a pretty good start. I got in front of Dylan and I thought, okay, I'm golden here. I'll just sit here and watch what goes on, see if something happens with BJ, and I could hold him behind me because I was able to get off the corner a lot better. I think Dylan was a little better into the corner, but coming off the corner, I could open it back up. So I felt okay. But then BJ was exactly the opposite. I could get into the corner faster, but he was coming off faster. And I don't know when I passed him. There was a gaggle of cars doing all kinds of stuff going out of turn 2, and I come up down by the casino fountain area, and I'm like, wait a minute, how am I in P2? And I looked and I saw he was in P4. I thought, oh, well, this is weird. And then traffic got a little weird. There was a back marker who cut over, and then Dylan cut in front of me and almost hit me. I had to slam on the brakes, and both of them came by. And then I was like, well, my mirrors are empty, so that's no good. I need to get my mirrors full again. And well, BJ was happy to oblige there. I think that pass around turn 3 was, I hope you got that on the broadcast, because that turn 3 pass was quite fun.
We did get that one, and then during the interview right now, we're looking at the 3-wide finish, splitting a GT car between E and BJ as well. That was an exciting moment to close the race, because I don't know if you know this, Michael, but how you finished for 3rd right there was also how 1st finished as well.
Really, that close? Holy cow! Because I think I saw a little
GT car as well.
Yeah, coming up on Matt Hollander at the end there, when we were both coming up on him, I think I saw a little poo come out of the back of the car, so I knew he was really nervous for the whole thing.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming out and racing every single week with POC. Is there anybody you want to give a shout out to?
Of course, all the sponsors. I love Truffle Shuffle. They're fantastic. They've been wonderful to me. T-Mobile for Business, and Sugar Studios LA. Of course, my girlfriend. I unfortunately will not be here for my home race at COTA at the next race because, well, don't feel too bad for me. I'm going to be off on a Caribbean island, but that's okay. I'll survive. That'll be a drop week, and then I'll come back the following.
That was Michael Johnson finishing 3rd in the prototype class today, Joe.
Which is going to wrap us up. And before we go, we again want to thank the sponsors of this series. Porsche, there is no substitute. Find out more at Porsche.com. And Game Changer Wealth, helping you become a game changer with wealth. Big thanks to the team today, Joey, Daniel, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, website, and merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss a moment. As we heard, next time out is going to be Circuit of the Americas. That'll be Monday, October 21st at 10 p.m. Eastern. And be sure to check out our other broadcasts that we have listed here. But until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.
Wow.